Nick, hey, congratulations for Old Strangers.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Kate. Thank you.
Hey, not a problem, not a problem. Hey, so let's talk about this film of yours here. First of all, let's ask that basic question. What sparked the idea for Old Strangers?
Well, Old Strangers came from the quarantines and the lockdowns and the idea of reconnecting with people from our past. And I know there was like this phenomena, everyone was just sort of reaching out via Zoom, like old high school friends, old college friends. And I thought there was something very interesting about trying to rekindle the nostalgia of the past, but then the conflict of like the person you've become. And I knew I could tell an interesting story with that. And I really wanted to tell something that was out there in the woods, isolated, and where it would be like a really bad weekend getaway. And it's actually a prequel to a script I'd written called Not Like Us, which if Old Strangers holds up a mirror to like COVID lockdowns, and Not Like Us holds up a mirror to like Twitter. And it's about these people that get stranded in a roadside bar in the midst of an invasion. And they don't trust each other and they don't trust what's outside. So it creates a very tumultuous The Thing style setup. So in creating that mythology, I had sort of a groundwork for Old Strangers and what I knew the threat was going to be, the otherworldly threat. Like there is the psychological stuff that's going on, the interpersonal stuff, but then the otherworldly threat, I kind of knew how I wanted to do that and where I wanted to take it.
So you're basically saying Not Like Us is going to be your next project, possibly.
That would be, if everything goes well and this movie's well received, that would be awesome. It would be awesome to do Not Like Us. Yeah.
Now, tell us about the irony of, it's very ironic that we all experience this COVID-19 lockdown, but it's also ironic that you made Old Strangers, where it's basically a reunion, but yet everyone feels isolated.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I think I wanted to do something experiential, something that like with the cosmos and nature. And even though that is like, there's a lot of freedom that comes with nature, the circumstances they're still kind of bottled up. There's like a tilt shift effect throughout the picture. And my co-executive producer, Drew Marion, who's also my lead editor, and he and I did all the post-production on the movie. He was like, oh, that tilt shift feels like a snow globe. And I was like, that's perfect. They're in a snow globe. As much as they think they're breaking this isolation, they're kind of in a more confined, enclosed space, because in wanting to, escape our techno bubbles, they're sort of trapped in an isolated wilderness bubble. So it's kind of a cruel irony that I did to the characters. I was joking around with like the cast and crew that I've never been so mean to characters before as I am to the ones in Old Strangers. Because there's some moments of like elation and genuine friendship and genuine connection, and that's all just destroyed. So
So about these characters that you actually created, what was the original idea? Was just to have just three friends in the cabin in the woods, because obviously that's always a premise of something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, I wanted to use classic sci-fi horror tropes as an allegory for our current times, people's distrust of each other, trying to reconnect, the isolation, the trepidation that comes with all things COVID and pandemic. We don't say outright that it's the COVID pandemic, but it's fairly obvious once you start watching the picture. People are masked up, they have negative tests. And I didn't want to make a movie that was about the pandemic. I didn't want that to be front and center. I wanted it to be about people and trying to find that commonality and trying to find that kinship again. And the awkwardness of, I think we all had that experience, getting together with people from our past after it was sometimes over a year. I mean, there was family members that I didn't see for like 2 years, 3 years, because of the lockdowns. And that trying to find those commonalities again and trying to see like where your friendships stand. And I knew that the smaller the cast, the more awkward or the more uncomfortable I can make those situations be, and the marching orders for everyone on set was, you're not in a horror movie. So no matter, you're in a science fiction picture, no matter what happens, you would react as if you were with your friends and something bad happened with your friends. And your first thought wouldn't be like, oh, it's an alien invasion, or it's a monster, or it's a ghost. You'd be like, my friend is messing up and he's ruining my trip. Like that, he's really like, and I wanted to kind of toe that line of like, is this supernatural or is this just the result of mental illness and like wrestling with mental health? There's a lot of that in the picture as well.
I was gonna say, Nick, what did you try to classify this film as? Do you classify this sort of like a horror, or do you classify it like a psychological thriller? I mean, how did you want to approach this?
It's a sci-fi thriller, and of course there's like flavors of horror within, but I wanted to take it back to genre filmmaking that I grew up with, 70s and 80s genre filmmaking. The Shining, of course, there's a huge inspiration for this. A lot of John Carpenter with The Thing, Alien, of course. And the homage to like Evil Dead, the idea of like, I think it's tropey, but I don't think the trope is more famous than the amount of movies that use it. The Cabin in the Woods. I mean, there's obviously Cabin in the Woods. Cabin Fever does it a little bit. Evil Dead, but there aren't a ton of. It's just like such a nice trope. Just works. Like maybe Friday the 13th. There's an aspect of that, but I just love that style of filmmaking because it forces you to embrace the isolation of it. There's a lot of shots where we're looking through windows or like into them, having, even during the normal moments, it's still very voyeuristic. It's still very like there's something out there. And we wanted to do that a lot with the camera. I have to shout out my director of photography, Blake Gayton, because he was absolutely brilliant in the work he did on this. Everything was storyboarded, and then I sat with him and we built out lighting setups and camera packages and camera movements, and he really just lit every scene, framed up every scene. And this was because of the scale of the budget and the scale of the production. We really had to pre-plan and put our best foot forward and really be intentional with everything we did.
Because that you are on an indie budget, do you feel that this actually spurred more creativity, especially how you approach shots?
Yes, I think a lot of what. So I've done a few indie features before. I did Happy Birthday, Harris Malden, and then I did Green. Those were both small, low budget projects. And then I had a sketch comedy show, and I've done a lot of bigger budget stuff for WB and DC and Amazon, but in the talk show space. So I kind of got to hone a lot of different skills. And I find that the work you can do to maybe not get to the same level as a major big budget production, but the work you can do to make your movie feel big budget is all that pre-production. It's that storyboarding. It's having the plan. It's not being handicapped by your low budget, but yes, finding creative solutions and finding ways to really maximize that budget. I haven't shared it that much, but I actually think it's worth sharing. The shooting budget was only $10,000, and it was shot in 6 days. But the amount of experience and work and workers that were on set, like they were invaluable. The people that were working on it were like seasoned professionals. So every dollar that needed to go into production went into production, and everything else was on the skill sets of the craftsmen and women involved.
So obviously this is not technically a film about the pandemic, but obviously you filmed it. Well, technically we're still in the pandemic. Yeah. So which state of the pandemic did you actually, conceive the idea to start the production and filming it for that 6 days?
So I was working on a Kickstarter around Christmas Eve 2020. around the holiday season then, and it was about Italian American Christmas Eves in South Philadelphia. The Kickstarter was successful, but we didn't raise our funding goal, and I knew that I had to make something. I just been like on the shelf for like a whole year just about. So I called up Drew Marion, who's my co-executive producer on this, and again did all the post-production with me. He was my AD on set, and I was like, Drewski, I got this idea. I want to go up to Big Bear. I want to shoot it. Are you in? And he's like, yes. I was like, oh, okay. And then I called up Blake, my director of photography, and I was like, Blake, I want to shoot this. He's like, yes. I'm like, all right, okay. So that's that. And then I called up Kate Matlock, who is my HMU and makeup effects artist. And she was like, of course, Nick, let's do this. And Zane Gwindon, my sound engineer and recorder. And then the team was just coming together, and I was like, all right, we're going to do this. So I sat down, I wrote the script. I knew what I wanted to do with it. I didn't have the exact script. And then I banged the script out. And I wrote the roles for Ted Evans, who plays Michael, who's a good friend of mine, and he was in a lot of my sketches coming up. And then Colton as Chief Mastro. He plays the other lead, Danny. He was in a short film that my friend did called 2020. My friend Stephen Ford made this really great short that was a oneer like 1917. So I wrote the role for him. And then Kate, my makeup effects artist, was like, I work with this woman. She's a great actor. She was running around in the redwoods crying. I think she'd be perfect for this movie. I was like, okay, I'll give Madeline a call. And Madeline was like, yeah, let's do it. So everyone was like gung ho. And I was like, all right. So we shot this less than a year ago. We shot this first week of March, 2021. And our first unofficial day shooting was February 28th. That's where we did a lot of the drive up sequence, if you remember that or saw it in the trailer. And I'm very proud that we did it safely. Everyone that came up had a negative COVID test. And then we bubbled in 2 cabins. One was the cabin we shot in, and then the other was the crew cabin. And the only people to leave set were myself or Drew. And ironically enough, I had just come off of COVID. I had just recovered from COVID, and I took the antibody test, and my antibodies were really high. So I'm like, guys, I don't think I'm going to get anyone COVID anytime soon. I'm pretty good. And everyone was like, all right, we'll just, and everyone worked 15, 16-hour days, and we shot into the night, and it was the best set I've ever worked on. I've never had such a creative collaboration with everyone just at the top of their game. There was no fighting, there was no arguing. It was really a wonderful experience.
So literally negative COVID test.
Literally negative COVID tests. The tests that they have in the movie are their actual negative COVID tests. And that was the first scene we shot, like with with the principal photography. That was the first scene, was the drive up scene. So it was kind of like, whoa, this is weird. and the crew, because we were so close, and we worked in the studio in Burbank together doing DC Daily, and we did like 500 episodes of that show together. We hadn't seen each other in like almost a year, so we were all like old strangers, like, hey, like, and we were like, do we hug, or should we mask? It's like, well, we're gonna live in a house together. I don't think we can wear masks. So everyone just was like, all right, we got our masks off, we're out here in nature, and we're doing it. And I was like, yep. And we didn't get our lead actress's negative test until like that morning of shooting. Oh. So everyone was like, oh my God, the whole thing is hinging. Like, we're up there already. Like, we got the lights set, like we're ready to shoot. And we're like, if our lead actress tests positive, it's like, and we're canceled. There we go. So, yeah.
So the awkwardness was real. That is terrific. It's not only just the cast, but it's the entire crew.
Yeah, we were so used to working so closely together. So you have that commonality, but it's also like, it's been months since we've seen, like, what's been going on. Like, I know I talk to you every now and then, but yeah,
Now, one of the things that it's great about, a typical cabin in the woods or secluded mountains is, it's a cabin that's in a secluded mountain. But you mentioned before, when I think of Big Bear, I don't think of seclusion. I think of a vacation spot.
And so Big Bear, like, I love Big Bear. I think, like, anytime I drive up to Big Bear, I'm like, oh, this is like an 80s slasher film. Like, I'm from the East Coast, so like coming out here, I find Big Bear to be so kitschy and interesting. But even like during the pandemic, they were hit pretty hard. Like, the shots that you see of like closed buildings, they were closed. They were shut down, or boarded up, or whatever. The mountains were still open for skiing in some of the downtown, but we were up the hill. So we were like, once you get to Big Bear, like Maine and proper, there was like a level of tourism, but we kind of went out of our way. But something we strived for, and I think if you know the area, we were pretty successful with it, was creating that feel of isolation. Even the drive up, like making sure there was no other cars on the road, and just like taking our time with all of that to have photography that made it feel as isolated as possible. And that was, I think, one of the magic tricks we did. And then we went out in the woods, and we shot in the woods. We were out there, we hiked out there with the equipment, and we got to use some really cool technology. Blake designed a lot of these portable rigs with wireless bulbs and wireless lighting rigs, and that made it possible for us to shoot at night outdoors. And it was really, really an interesting and use of like modern technology.
I don't know. It sounds a bit challenging. Mountainous shoots, snow on the ground, night shoots, cold weather.
It was cold.
I mean, I don't know how you folks endure this, or put yourself up to the challenge for 16-hour days like this.
It was the one thing I'm upset about, and I feel like there are some shots that feel very icy and cold, but it was way colder than it looks. It was like, as soon as the sun set, it was a solid 20 degrees with a high altitude. I think, where we were at was like 3,500 feet above sea level. And there's an altitude factor. There's the hilly incline. None of the terrain is even, and we're doing like steady cam shots, and we're doing chasing shots and tracking shots, and all that stuff, and shooting a lot of it at night, and people screaming and yelling, and some of the neighbors would come like check us out the next morning, like, oh, everything all right? Oh, you guys are making a movie. Oh, that's so great. But yeah, it was a tough shoot, and I have to give kudos to the team, but my lead actress, Madeline Humphreys, she just dove in. I mean, it was some tough shooting, and she was ready for every single take. Every single take. We never had to wait for her at any point. Yeah.
It sounds like you were very fortunate with the cast.
Yeah.
That's actually involved.
Yeah, I really couldn't have done it without everyone on the team. And I know a lot of people say that, but really, if one person was missing, we just couldn't do this. We couldn't make it work. And I needed an actress that looked like a movie star, but wasn't but could rough it and do, like she needed to capture an audience, but would be comfortable sort of roughing it and doing some rough stunt work and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's, it's tough. It's tough to find that, especially to like trust me to come up and be so open, and everyone just clicked, and that was important. And it was a testament to just the amazing collaborative nature of this production.
Now, of course, a lot of people will actually notice because lots of movies out now these days are going to be like 90 minutes long, or a comic book movie that's almost like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
But yours end up with around 62 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Were there a lot of scenes kind of like cut for like pacing wise, or
no?
Not a lot of films are at almost nearly exactly an hour long, if you know what I mean.
So one of my fears and concerns, and it has come up in reviews and stuff, and and was that it wasn't going to be, for the budget that I had, for the story I was trying to tell, I didn't think it could be over 60 minutes. There was nothing cut out. There was nothing cut. Everything that we shot is in the movie. Literally every stitch of film is in the movie. There was nothing really short, and there was some things maybe like minor lines and stuff cut out, but like there weren't scenes lost. I'm of the new school. I'm of the digital media age. I've done this before. I did a 90-minute feature. I did an 85-minute feature. And you don't get a prize for doing that, especially on the low budget. I think the prize for a low budget indie is that your movie is enjoyable and watchable, and people aren't checking their watch or turning it off. I think there's a lot of competition with a lot of media today. Technically, a feature film is over 40 minutes. by Academy standards in most film festivals. 60 is definitely, it's like locked in. It's like a television movie. It's a feature length picture. I looked at this like Black Mirror was super well received. Most of those episodes aren't even an hour long. Some of my favorite television right now in the Mandalorian or just different episodes of TV shows have all different running times. I wanted to play with that. I wanted to say like, look, I have a budget and a team and a story that could tell a really, really tight 60-minute story without, I hope that keeps you engaged. So that was something that was conscious. There were some people that were like, add this, add that, maybe like add a sequence and all that. And I was like, I don't know if it progresses the story I'm trying to tell. And you got to think of it dollars and cents wise. That's $1,000. Another day of shooting is another $1,000. It's getting everyone together. It isn't as easy the way we were trying to make this picture was a very high caliber, solid lensing, shooting raw, good lighting, camera movement. It's not cheap to do that. And people think they're like, oh, you just show up on set and then you just start shooting. Like, no, like everything is built. And when you're dealing with a small set like a cabin, it's constantly moving equipment around. It's constantly shuffling lighting setups and changing things. And like, we had a fireplace light. We had a real fire. We had all like, and to make it, to create that warmth, inviting environment, it takes more than just like flicking on the lights and hitting the camera. So we wanted to make sure that every frame of the movie felt intentional and felt expensive and felt like there was work behind it, not just a throwaway indie scene. I think some people really enjoy that pace. Some people are like, oh, it feels like there wasn't enough. And the one thing I can say, it was intentional. So that was it.
I always like to ask indie directors like yourself is that if you didn't have a budget, would you do something different?
I think what I would have done differently is there's probably some sequences that I maybe would have added another day storyline wise, because right now the movie takes place over 3 days. I probably would have added one more day. I would have kind of expanded into the town, maybe something like that, but it would have really had to have made sense. What I think big productions, and I was just watching like a making of for the finale of Succession, no spoilers here, but they were talking about the final scene that they shot, and they said they shot it and they cut it, and then they watched it and they went back and they shot some more and they cut it. I think that's what low budget filmmaking is. That's the luxury that I wish I had. The ability to shoot something, cut it, look at it and be like, you know what? I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to add these dynamics. You only get one shot. We were up there, we shoot the scene, we shoot it once. We were shooting raw, so our footage size was humongous. We couldn't really view the footage until we got back to our home rigs. And then you're like, you're seeing what you got, you're cutting it together from what you have. But having that luxury of really not just finding a scene, but finding a scene, coming back and shooting more and taking other, because like, you find stuff while you're in post-production. I think that's what I would have done with a bigger budget. But I don't know if I would have packed anything more into the story I told, but I think I would have been able to expand certain scenes and reshoot and add scenes and find scenes over the course of production.
Wow, that sounds pretty challenging, especially that you have to get those takes right.
Yeah,
nearly right off the bat.
Yeah, the most takes we did were about 9, and that was for like moving camera stuff. I'm crazy for doing that. I'm ambitious for doing this, and it was a 5-day principal photography shoot, and I knew we were going to pack those days in, and really like I'm a little bit Clint Eastwood in the directing sense that like everyone's a professional. Let's get what we get and let's move on. Let's not beat a dead horse, and let's not try to we're all professionals. Do what we're here to do. I'm not trying to like ride you to do it exactly how I need it to be. So I wanted to keep that energy. I didn't want anyone to feel like they were stifled, because there's nothing worse on a small budget than feeling like the director is just beating up on you. So yeah, you got to just kind of get it and move on and be like, okay, and we were working in a really good clip, and I think everyone was very comfortable and positive with what they were doing. So there wasn't any moment where I was like, oh man, we really just don't have the scene, or we don't have the, yeah.
Wow, that's great. And because we got a completed story, and that's what we're watching. So so Nick, tell us what's next for you.
I'd love to do the sequel, Not Like Us. It takes place probably a day after the events of Old Strangers, just in a different part of the country. Similar snowy, isolated environment, but it's more of an ensemble piece. And you can listen to the radio play of that. So if you watch Old Strangers and you enjoy it, look up Not Like Us on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform. And it's a 5-part radio play. So you can kind of, you can listen, and as it expands out into a broader story. But yeah, I'd like to stay in this space for a little bit. I do still want to make Christmas Eve, which is it's an Italian-American story that I'm proud of my heritage, and I feel like a lot of Italian-American representation is mostly negative or criminal. And I'd love to show what it was like for me growing up, and sort of this familial environment with family and food. And there's still tensions and there's still conflict, but it's not people being gunned down in the streets. And I have a kind of a post-apocalyptic thing that maybe I'll toy with. There's a few different things. I got to see how well Old Strangers does, or I'll just hang it up altogether and be like, no, I'm done.
Well, let's not hope for that outcome.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up, Nick. Where can we watch Old Strangers now?
So Old Strangers is available to purchase or rent on all video on-demand platforms: iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Vudu, Vimeo, YouTube, Comcast On Demand, Verizon Fios. I think you can buy a Blu-ray or DVD off of Amazon.com, which is pretty cool. I'm going to do that. I still buy physical media sometimes. And we're doing a cabin giveaway. So if you buy the movie or rent the movie, you rate it, take a screen grab, you send it to us on Instagram, you could win a 2-night stay in the cabin. So that's a pretty fun giveaway we're kicking off pretty soon.
Oh, a stay at the cabin, not literally a cabin giveaway.
No, yeah, we're giving away an $800,000 cabin in Big Bear, California.
More than the movie budget.
More than the movie budget. Yes, we're really blowing it out with the giveaways.
Wow, this is exciting. Well, crossing our fingers that this is successful and you could actually make the original movie concept that you wanted to do. And
thank you.
Everyone should also check out at least the teleplay, just in case if they want more story out of this.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for speaking to us about Old Strangers, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again down the road.
Whoa, cat attack.
That's right.
Thanks, Gig. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye now.